The morning I found out, I was sitting in the conference room on the 14th floor of a building I had signed the lease for. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. The attorney across the table was speaking, but I had stopped hearing words about 60 seconds in. My name was still on the door. My signature was still on the original articles of incorporation, framed in the lobby downstairs. I had insisted on that, a small vanity I never apologized for. And yet, according to the documents now spread across the table in front of me, I owned exactly 0% of the company I had spent 6 years building from a single laptop and a pitch deck I wrote at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I picked up my coffee, took a sip even though it was cold, set it back down, and said 4 words. "Show me the signatures." That was the beginning of the end. Not for me, for him. I grew up in Queens, not the romantic, gritty, character-building version of Queens you read about in memoirs, the real version. My father worked double shifts at a dry cleaning shop on Jamaica Avenue for 22 years. My mother kept the books for 3 different small businesses on the side, at night, at the kitchen table, with a calculator and a composition notebook. I watched both of them pour everything they had into work that would never make them rich, and I made a decision very early. I would work just as hard, but I would own what I built. I put myself through Fordham on scholarships and 2 part-time jobs. I graduated with a degree in communications and a minor in business that I had basically designed myself by petitioning the department twice. I spent 4 years at a mid-sized marketing agency in Midtown, learning everything I could about client acquisition, brand strategy, and the part nobody talks about in business school, how to keep a client when things go wrong. I was good at it, not because I was the most creative person in the room, because I was the most prepared. Every meeting, every pitch, every difficult phone call, I had already played it out in my head the night before. By the time I was 28, I had a client list, a reputation, and a plan. I also had a problem. I was great with people and strategy. I was less great with operations, infrastructure, and the kind of systematic back-end architecture that turns a freelance operation into a real firm. I needed a partner. My father had given me his watch the week before I left the agency, a simple silver Seiko he'd worn every day for 15 years. Not expensive, not flashy. He pressed it into my hand and said, "You'll know when to wear it." I wore it the day I signed our first client. I wore it the day we crossed our first million in revenue. It sat in the top drawer of my desk every other day. It was the one thing in that office that belonged entirely to me. I met Marcus at a networking event in Tribeca. He was the kind of person who made an impression immediately. Tall, well-dressed, quick with a joke, the sort of man who seemed to know everyone in the room within 20 minutes of arriving. He had a background in operations and finance, had spent time at 2 different startups, and spoke about systems and scale with a fluency that I found genuinely impressive. We had coffee the next week, then a working lunch the week after. Within 6 months, we had signed a partnership agreement and filed the paperwork for Meridian Group, a boutique brand strategy and marketing consultancy based in Manhattan. I want to be clear about something, because I think it matters. Marcus was not, in those early years, a bad partner. He was, in many ways, exactly what I needed. He built the operational backbone of that firm. He negotiated our office lease. He hired our first 2 account managers with a precision I would not have managed alone. When I was in the room with clients, he was behind the scenes making sure the work actually got done. We had a rhythm. We had momentum. We had, I believed, genuine mutual respect. There were signs, of course. There always are. I just didn't see them for what they were. The first sign, Marcus had a habit of being vague about money in ways that seemed like efficiency at the time. "I'll handle the quarterly filings. Let me deal with the accountant. I have a relationship with him. You focus on client relationships. That's where you add the most value." I heard those words as division of labor. I should have heard them as division of access. The second sign. He had a way of subtly repositioning my contributions in conversations with potential investors. Nothing overt, nothing I could point to in the moment, but more than once I left a meeting with the faint, unshakable feeling that the story of how Meridian had been built had been quietly rewritten, with him as the architect and me as a talented hire who had come along for the ride. The third sign. He started CCing me less. On legal correspondence, on banking communications, on conversations with our corporate attorney, who, I would later discover, he had quietly switched without telling me. I noticed all of it. I told myself it was ego. I told myself it was the growing pains of a partnership that had scaled faster than either of us expected. I told myself I was being paranoid because we had just closed a contract with a financial services firm that put us firmly in the 8-figure revenue conversation, and paranoia seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford. I trusted him. I want to be honest about that because the truth is more complicated than betrayal. I trusted him because the business was working, and I didn't look closely enough at what was happening underneath. It started with an email I was never supposed to see. Our office manager, a meticulous and quietly brilliant woman named Diane, forwarded it to me by mistake. She had meant to send it to Marcus, and the names in her contacts were adjacent. It was a message from a law firm I didn't recognize, referencing a document amendment I had never been informed of. The language was dense and deliberately opaque, the kind of legal writing designed to be readable only by someone already inside the conversation. But 3 words stopped me cold. Majority ownership transfer. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop, picked up my bag, and walked out of the office without telling anyone where I was going. I walked 6 blocks to a coffee shop on Hudson Street, ordered nothing, sat at a corner table, and opened my laptop again. I spent 4 hours that afternoon pulling every piece of documentation I could access from our shared drive, our legal files folder, and my own personal email archive. What I found, and what I didn't find, told a story I was not ready for. An amendment to our original partnership agreement, dated 14 months earlier, appeared to transfer operational and financial control to Marcus in the event of a strategic restructuring. I had never seen this document. My signature was on it. I am a precise person. I know my own signature. I have signed thousands of documents in the course of building that company. The signature on that amendment was not mine. I sat very still for a long time. The coffee shop filled up around me. Someone bumped my table. I didn't move. Here is what I did not do. I did not call Marcus. I did not send an email. I did not make any indication in any form that I had seen anything. I paid for the coffee I had never ordered. I found out later I had just been sitting at a reserved table, and I walked home. That night I made a list, not of what I had lost, of what I needed to find. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had written the original pitch deck for Meridian, and I thought through every step of what came next with the kind of cold, systematic focus that I had spent 6 years applying to client strategy. Only now, the campaign was mine. The client I was fighting for was myself. And the timeline had to be invisible. The first call I made the next morning was not to a friend. It was to a corporate litigation attorney named Patricia Osei, who had been referred to me 2 years earlier by a client and whose card had lived in the back of my wallet ever since. I had never needed her. I remember thinking when I first put the card away that I hoped I never would. I explained the situation in 30 minutes. She asked precise questions. She did not express surprise, which told me she had heard versions of this story before. By the end of the call, she had outlined a 4-stage strategy, the first step of which was forensic document analysis. Within 2 weeks, we had engaged a certified forensic document examiner, a former FBI-trained specialist who worked exclusively on commercial fraud cases. She analyzed the signature on the amendment against a controlled set of 12 verified documents bearing my authentic signature. Her conclusion was unambiguous. The signature was fabricated. The ink distribution, pressure pattern, and letter formation were inconsistent with my authentic signature at a statistically significant level. She had seen this technique before. It was not a forgery made by someone unfamiliar with my signature. It was made by someone who had access to my documents and had practiced. The second stage was the financial audit. Patricia brought in a forensic accounting firm to conduct a full review of Meridian's financial records, going back to the beginning of our partnership. What they found, layered beneath 6 years of legitimate business operations, was a pattern. Quarterly transfers, never large enough to trigger automatic review flags, always just under reporting thresholds. Moving from company accounts into a separate LLC Marcus had registered in Delaware 2 years into our partnership. Not theft in the obvious sense, reallocation, obscured equity extraction. The kind of financial architecture that takes months to build and is designed specifically to look like nothing. The third stage was documentation. For 8 weeks, I went to work every day and I said nothing. I attended every meeting. I participated in every strategy session. I signed every document that legitimately required my signature and carefully documented every one. I allowed Marcus to continue believing that I was exactly what he had apparently decided I was, a useful face for the business who had long since ceded the levers of control. He was relaxed. He was, at times, almost warm. He took a long weekend in the Hamptons. He upgraded his car. The fourth stage was the shareholder record. Our original agreement had granted us equal equity. Patricia's team obtained certified copies of the original filing from the New York Secretary of State's office, documents that Marcus's amendment had attempted to supersede, but had not legally invalidated, because the amendment itself had been executed fraudulently. The original agreement was intact. The amendment was void. Patricia said to me near the end of the 8th week, "When we move completely. One day. Everything at once." I told her I understood. I went home, opened the top drawer of my desk, and put my father's watch on my wrist. It was a Tuesday morning in March when it happened. New York in early March. Gray, cold, the kind of day where the city feels like it hasn't decided yet what it wants to be. I arrived at the office at my usual time. I said good morning to the front desk. I poured a coffee. At 9:15, 3 things happened simultaneously. Patricia's firm filed an emergency injunction in the Southern District of New York, freezing all Meridian financial accounts pending a fraud investigation. At the same moment, a process server entered the lobby of our building and presented Marcus with a civil complaint. 47 pages, 5 counts, including fraudulent misrepresentation, forgery of a commercial document, and breach of fiduciary duty. And our corporate bank, having been notified the previous afternoon under attorney-client protocol, froze all transaction authority pending court review. I was sitting in the conference room on the 14th floor when Marcus walked in. He had the complaint in his hand. He was not the composed, charming man I had known for 6 years. He looked like someone who had just realized that every move he thought he had made in secret had been watched. He said my name. Just once. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, "You should call your attorney." And I turned back to the document in front of me. What followed in the subsequent weeks was the kind of legal and financial unraveling that Marcus had apparently never genuinely believed was possible. The forensic signature analysis was admitted as evidence. The financial audit revealed approximately $340,000 in improperly redirected funds over 4 years. The Delaware LLC was traced, documented, and included in the civil complaint. 3 of our own staff, people who had worked closely with both of us, people Marcus had apparently assumed were loyal to him, provided witness statements that corroborated the pattern of behavior Patricia had outlined. His own attorney, in a deposition that Patricia later described to me as remarkable in its candor, acknowledged that the amendment could not be defended as legitimate. They attempted a settlement offer twice. Both times, Patricia advised me to decline. We went to judgment. The court ruled in my favor on all 5 counts. The fraudulent amendment was nullified. Full operational and ownership control of Meridian Group was restored to me. Marcus was ordered to repay the redirected funds with interest. The matter was referred to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges. The framed articles of incorporation are still in the lobby. My name was always on them. I am writing this from the same office I have worked in for 6 years. The view is the same, the work is the same, the clients are the same. Almost all of them stayed, which told me something important about what they had actually been buying all along. Diane is still our office manager. She apologized once for the forwarded email. I told her it was the most valuable mistake anyone has ever made on my behalf. Marcus is no longer in the building. He is no longer in the industry as a practical matter. The civil judgment is on public record. The DA's review is ongoing. He had built something in the shadows for years, quietly, patiently, with great care. It collapsed in a single morning. My father's watch is back in the top drawer of my desk. When I retrieved it, after Marcus had, I discovered, used it as a prop in a pitch meeting without my knowledge, a detail so small and so revealing that I still think about it, I held it for a long time before I put it away. It is not a trophy. It is not evidence. It is just a watch that belonged to a man who worked double shifts for 22 years and wanted something better for his daughter. I think about what I would tell someone who is sitting right now where I was sitting the evening I found that email. Someone who has discovered that a person they trusted has been quietly, systematically building a structure designed to erase them. Someone who is afraid that it is too late, that too much has already been transferred, that they have already lost. Here is what I would tell them. The most dangerous thing you can do in that moment is move too fast. Anger wants speed. Strategy requires patience. The person who betrayed you has had months, possibly years of preparation. You need weeks. Give yourself the weeks. Find the right people. Document everything. Say nothing. Your composure is not weakness. It is the most powerful thing you have. Every day that you walk back into that building, sit at that desk, and give nothing away, you are doing something your opponent has no framework for. Because people who operate in bad faith cannot imagine someone operating with this level of discipline. They think you don't know. They are wrong. Let them keep thinking that, for exactly as long as you need them to. The system, when you work it correctly, works. That is not naive. I have the court documents to prove it. You built something real. Real things leave records. Records do not lie. Go find yours.